after a weekend of retaliatory strikes, the United States is warning Iran and the militias it arms and funds that it will conduct more attacks if American forces in the Mideast continue to be targeted. Today is Monday, February 5th, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. After a weekend of retaliatory strikes, the United States is warning Iran and the militias it arms and funds that it will conduct more attacks if American forces in the Mideast continue to be targeted. President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said the U.S. is not seeking an open-ended military campaign across the region, but that America is prepared to deal with anything that any group or any country tries to come at us with. Sullivan delivered the warnings after the U.S. and Britain on Saturday struck 36 Houthi targets in Yemen. The Iran-backed militants have fired on American and international interests repeatedly in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war. A far-right minister in Israel's government has criticized President Joe Biden and said that having Donald Trump in power would allow more freedom to fight Hamas. The comments have sparked outrage among other Israeli officials and highlighted the sensitivity of relations as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits the region again this week. One focus for Blinken's visit is Israel's tense negotiations mediated by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt, aimed at freeing more than 100 remaining captives taken in the Oct. 7 Hamas attack. The U.S. says another top priority for the visit is making sure more humanitarian aid reaches besieged Gaza. The United States and Britain have struck Iran-backed armed groups in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, while Israel presses ahead with its offensive against Hamas in Gaza. U.S. troops maintain a presence in the area to fight the Islamic State group. They returned to Iraq in 2014 after the extremists overran much of the country's north and started a genocidal campaign against the Yazidis, a religious minority. U.S. forces are also present in Syria, where they work with Kurdish-led fighters to keep pressure on IS, as well as in Jordan, a long-standing Western ally. When Donald Trump left the White House 3 years ago, he was a one-term president whose refusal to accept his re-election defeat culminated in an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Today, he's on the cusp of a stunning political turnaround. He's poised to recapture the Republican presidential nomination in record speed, and that's despite 4 criminal cases totaling 91 felony charges, as well as a civil fraud trial that threatens to strip him of control of much of his business empire. Among the things that helped him was the strategy of going after rival Ron DeSantis early on and working aggressively to line up endorsements. Senators have released a highly anticipated bill that pairs border enforcement policy with wartime aid for Ukraine and Israel. It's already running into opposition in the House. The bill is a long-shot effort to overcome skepticism from Republicans, including House Speaker Mike Johnson. But he quickly dismissed its chance of passage. The $118 billion proposal is the best chance for President Joe Biden to resupply Ukraine with wartime aid. But Johnson said the bill won't succeed in the House. Moscow-installed officials say Ukrainian shelling killed at least 28 people. Saturday at a bakery in the Russian-occupied city of Lysychansk, a local leader wrote on Telegram that at least one child was among the dead. He said emergency services rescued a further 10 people from under the rubble. Ukrainian officials in Kiev did not comment on the incident. Both Moscow and Kiev have increasingly relied on longer-range attacks this winter amid largely unchanged positions on the 930-mile front line in the nearly 2-year-old war. The second of back-to-back atmospheric rivers is drenching Northern California, flooding roads, knocking out power to hundreds of thousands, and leading forecasters to warn of possible hurricane-force winds and mudslides as it heads south. The storm system knocked down trees and power lines Sunday in the San Francisco Bay Area, where winds topped 60 miles per hour in some areas. Gusts exceeding 80 miles per hour have been recorded in the mountains. The system is expected to dump heavy to moderate rain on Southern California, and officials there warned of potentially devastating flooding. They ordered evacuations for canyons that burned in recent wildfires that are at high risk for mud and debris flows. Judges overseeing the cases against U.S. Capitol rioters are trying to set the record straight concerning distortions about the January 6th, the attack that have been promoted by Donald Trump and his allies. In a recent ruling, U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth condemned the depiction by Trump and others. January 6th defendants as political prisoners and hostages. Judges appointed by presidents from both political parties have described the riot as an affront to democracy, and they've admonished defendants for portraying themselves as the victims of politically motivated prosecutions. Trump has closely aligned himself with the rioters as campaigns to return to the White House. He's pledged to pardon a large portion of them if he's elected president in November. House Republicans will move forward with a $17.6 billion package to provide military aid to Israel and replenish U.S. weapons. The bill leaves out more aid for Ukraine, underscoring the challenges facing supporters of a comprehensive national security package that would also include billions of dollars for immigration enforcement. The move gives Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republicans the chance to show support for Israel, even though there is little chance the Senate would go along with the narrower effort. Meanwhile, text of a broader Senate compromise is expected to be released this weekend, and a key test vote on that package will be held next week. Taylor Swift has won Album of the Year for Midnights, breaking a Grammys record for most wins in the category with 4. Miley Cyrus won Record of the Year Sunday night for her hit Flowers. Victoria Monet won Best New Artist at the performance-packed show that aired live from Los Angeles. Cyrus' win was her second of the night, and her second Grammy ever. Taylor Swift used her 13th Grammy win to announce her new album, The Tortured Poets Department, will arrive April 19th. Dua Lipa opened the 66th annual Grammy Awards with a high-octane medley. Phoebe Bridgers took an early lead, winning 4 trophies ahead of the main telecast. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Monday, February 5th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.